This is Homefront Ethanol, and I'm gonna show you guys how to turn this heater that I got for free into a Moonshine Still. Let's get to it. I'm gonna be using this pipe cutter, this multi-tool. If you don't have a multi-tool, you can use a hacksaw. I'm gonna be using this impact with a 5/16 tip on it. And if you don't have that, you can use a screwdriver and these pair of pliers. This is all the safety stuff you're gonna need. These heaters are filled with water that's probably pretty toxic. So we've got rubber gloves, rags, a drain pan, and an oil jug that I got from O'Reilly's. We're gonna get as much of that water as we can into this. And these are some ear protection I'm gonna be using. First thing I'm gonna do is get the heater out of the frame. So I'm gonna take out every one of these little screws with this impact here. These little clips held everything in. I'm gonna take those off and save them because they're gonna help me later. But other than that, this whole copper assembly comes out of the frame. This is the control side of the heater. These wire nuts are the last thing holding this thing together. Just like that, we're free. This is what the heater itself looks like after you get it out of the frame. And the first thing we're gonna do is elevate this side with a brick. And we're gonna cut right there. This is where you want gloves. That was exciting. I removed that brick. Now I'm gonna let this side down and drain it all down into that pan. When you're building a still, you can only use silver solder. Now this heater was not built with silver solder. This is all lead. So anywhere where you see a solder joint, we're gonna have to cut around that. We can't use it. So I'm gonna cut this side. I'm gonna cut it on this side of the solder joint. I'm taking this side off as well so that I can get to this with the pipe cutter. All right, and this is what we're left with now. Since everything's taken pretty much apart, we're done with the multi-tool. We're gonna be using the pipe cutter for the rest of it. If you've never used one of these things, they're pretty easy. This one's adjustable, so it'll fit a very large pipe, but you can also crank it down and get the smaller pipe. Let me show you. If you guys have never used one of these things before, they're pretty easy. I'd never used one until a couple weeks back, and I figured it out pretty easily. So you're just gonna put it on, make sure both of these wheels are touching, tighten it down until it gets just barely tight, and give it a spin. And as you spin that, it's gonna score down into the metal to where you can tighten it more. So you just spin it around, tighten it a little bit more, spin it around again, tighten it a little bit more, and repeat process till you're through it. I got this heater for free because I removed about 3 of them from a house. I already took apart the other 2 and I learned some lessons along the way. And this is definitely the best way to do it. We're almost through it, and there we go. Now this is the heating element that came with the heater. The electronics were hooked up here, the dial was over here, and this heating element was what made the whole thing work. But unfortunately, this heating element is not food grade safe, so we will not be able to reuse it to make the rest of our still. So what I'm gonna do is everywhere where I cut it with the multi-tool, I'm gonna come back with the pipe cutter and take another 1/2 inch off of it so I have nice clean ends to solder everything to. Other than that, for this process, I've got a few more cuts to make. One cut here, one cut here. Remember, we can't use anything that's a previous solder joint. I'm gonna cut this in half so I have 2 different pieces. I'm gonna make a cut on either side of this 90-degree bend, and I'm gonna make the final cut just before this solder joint. So I'm gonna get to it and show you guys what it looks like after. All right, so you guys can already see how much nicer this looks. But here's the old piece, the multi-tool cut, and here's the pipe cutter. The one last thing there is to do after you use the pipe cutter, on most every pipe cutter, they've got a tool on the back of it. And this is for deburring. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna stick this down in there and just rotate it a little bit. And what that's gonna do is knock off all the burrs, which are just little pieces of copper. I'll probably hit that again with some sandpaper. I'd like to explain my plan a little bit and hopefully answer some questions. These are all 3 heaters disassembled with all the parts that I can use out of them. I have 3 pieces of 1 5/8" copper. They're about 27 inches long a piece. I've got 3 pieces of 3/4 inch copper that are all a little bit less than 5 foot. I've got 3 pieces of 3-inch copper that are about 27 to 29 inches. These used to be the radiators of the heater. They're just 3/4 inch copper with aluminum fins on them. So let me explain what everything is for. The type of still I'm going to be making is called a Bokakob Still, or called a Boka for short. It consists of a large main column. I'm not going to get into too much detail in this video because I'm eventually going to show you guys exactly how it's done. But basically, these 3 are going to make up the major column. This 3/4 inch I'm going to use to plumb everything else in. And these, which used to make up the radiator of the heater, I'm going to repurpose and turn into the cooling system for my still. These things have so much surface area and so much aluminum, you almost couldn't ask for a better heat transferring system. I've still got a lot of work to do on this project. Everything here needs to be cleaned with either gasoline or some real strong solvent. I've got a lot of stuff coming in the mail. This 1 5/8" pipe is pretty weird size. I had to order couplings online. I've also got all my silver solder and my valves coming in the mail. In the next episode, I'm going to show you guys how this all solders together and this Bokakob Still is really going to take shape. But until then, I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. The channel is Homefront Ethanol. Please like and subscribe. You guys have a good one.